Hello and welcome to your in-depth weekly horoscope for week commencing the 19th of September. This is for the Sun or the Ascendant. I'm going to give you the broad themes to look out for, but please stay with me. I will then dive deep to give you in forensic detail each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces. Now, this week could be described a bit like a sports match, a game of two halves, or a week of two halves. The first half of this week has a very strong resemblance to the energies which played out last week. That angle between the Sun and Pluto, very much a transformative aspect, that reaches a peak on Monday and lasts through to midweek. Venus and Mars are still in a right angle, and that lasts through to midweek. And that's bringing a greater sense of tension, but also potential excitement into the romantic realm. And also because Uranus is angling with Venus this week too, there is an opportunity to liven things up a little bit around all sorts of relationships by being a bit more spontaneous and not just going through the same routines and patterns that we can all tend to settle down into. Now also, those two retreating planets of Mercury and Jupiter are in opposition through to the middle of this week, which can see some bubbly conversations. It can also see some intense disagreements. You know, Jupiter is the planet that governs the sign of Sagittarius, which is very much about knowledge, but in the sign of Aries it can be more direct. Now the more moderate energies of Mercury in Libra is asking us all to find a balance, but of course the retrograde can see some cross wires. But later in this week we have one of the biggest events of the whole year. On Friday we have the Cardinal Quadrant 3 as the Sun moves into the sign of Venus, and we have the autumnal equinox. This provides a backdrop for the next 13 weeks, but particularly for the following 4 weeks, relationships are going to be a big part of everyone's thinking. And on this particular event, the Sun and Mercury are absolutely conjunct, or cazimi. So I think important to really take the whole concept of relating seriously. And that doesn't, of course, mean just saying what we want or how we feel. It means being able to listen to other people, but crucially comprehend where they're coming from if they tend to have a different approach to ourselves. And then on Sunday, we have a new moon in the sign of Libra, which just brings even greater dynamism into our need to relate well. But this one's in an opposition with Jupiter. Interesting, Jupiter's still in that retrograde, and I think that this means that there can, if we're open to it, be some really positive exchanges. We see lots of people giving their opinions these days, but it's very important to also have conversations and discussions. And I think as this week goes on, despite any tensions that may be there, and of course Saturn and Uranus are still inching closer to their exact square, which within 1 minute occurs between the 2nd and 12th of October, a repeat of an energy that was so prevalent in 2021 and at the start of this year. There is a lot of tension around. So if we can find a way to embrace this Libran energy of trying to find points of agreement, or to celebrate the things that we share rather than highlighting all the time the things that are different between us, I think it does provide an enormous opportunity over the next few weeks. So Cancer, your week commencing the 19th of September forecast begins in a very similar vein to last week's general themes. Now the Sun's angle to Pluto, that trine, that 120 degree enabling trine, is exact on Monday. The Sun in your sector of everyday conversation and how you think and your ideas, linking beautifully to Pluto in your sector of relating. I think in the first half of this week, that gives you a huge opportunity to really feel a deep connection to someone, or actually, if there's no one particularly relevant in your life at the moment, especially romantically, to actually understand more clearly what's really important to you in terms of the features you'd like to see in another person. So Pluto works in lots of different ways, but I think that this is a very meaningful influence. Now, of course, Mars is in that tricky 12th house. It is in a right angle to Venus. If you're in a romantic relationship at the moment, and maybe there are some issues that have been a little bit raw, and perhaps there's been a reluctance on either side to talk things through, something could come into the open. And because Uranus in your sector of the future and friendship is linking brilliantly to Venus, there can be bubbly conversations. And if you're lucky enough to be in a relationship that's really progressive, there's a lot to go for this week. But if those issues from the past, either within you or between you, depending on your unique circumstances, are still quite powerfully activated, I think that Mars could see you or see someone else blurt something out that is really important. And whilst it could be painful, actually that trine between the Sun and Pluto is bringing to the surface, because Pluto can see us quarry deep, could bring to the surface something that does need releasing. And once it's released, that can be really positive. I also think some Cancer people, and that could include you, are still thinking very actively about where you live and how you live there because of the position of Mercury and its angle to Jupiter, the opposition. Now that's because Jupiter and Mercury can be very much to do with contracts. Now of course, once we have the autumnal equinox comes in on Friday, the Sun makes its way along with Mercury. They're exactly conjunct into your fourth house in the case of the Sun. That really sets the tone for the following 13 weeks. It's going to be a big thing for you to feel really at ease in your environment, or to get the home you want, or to adapt it decoratively or physically in some kind of way. But because Mercury is retrograde, but in that Cazimi conjunction with the Sun, could see quite inspired about how you can come up with different ideas. On Sunday, the new moon in your fourth house just gives that more push and more traction. But that's in an opposition with Jupiter as well, and Jupiter right at the top of your chart. So your ability to basically articulate who you are, what you stand for, your message, your beliefs, could actually be very important if you're trying to negotiate with a lender or an intermediary such as a broker, or perhaps it's to do with a landlord. The way you depict yourself can be extremely important to your prospects over this next quarter year, but particularly in the next 4 weeks.